Single-dad veteran carried injured woman from burning car she'd been following him. He thought he was saving a stranger from the flames, until she whispered through the smoke that she'd been searching for him, because the tended secret she carried could destroy or redeem his entire life. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The autumn rain fell in a gentle mist across the winding Tennessee back road, creating silvery sheets in Caleb Turner's headlights. His weathered hands gripped the steering wheel as his old pickup truck hummed along the familiar route home. The dashboard clock read 9:47 p.m. Another long day at Jerry's auto shop was finally behind him. The country radio played softly, some new song about summer nights and first loves. Caleb's mind wandered to Lily at home. At 15, she was getting too old for him to worry so much, but he couldn't help it. She'd texted earlier about warming up the leftover chili, making him smile at how she'd grown into such a responsible young woman, just like her mother. His headlights cut through the misty darkness, illuminating the rain-slicked asphalt ahead. The road curved gently between dense walls of oak and maple trees, their leaves starting to turn golden in the early fall weather. It was the kind of peaceful night drive he usually enjoyed after a long shift of oil changes and transmission repairs. The peace shattered in an instant. Ahead, maybe 50 yards, headlights suddenly jerked sideways. A car, some kind of sedan, was sliding out of control. Caleb's military training kicked in before his conscious mind could even process what was happening. His foot eased off the gas, hand steady on the wheel as he watched the other vehicle spin once, twice. The sedan hit the shoulder and flipped. The sound of metal crushing against asphalt cut through the quiet night like a gunshot. The car rolled once more before coming to rest on its roof in the most shallow ditch. Then came the flames. Caleb had his truck stopped and in park before the first tongue of fire licked up from the undercarriage. He was already moving, shrugging out of his heavy work jacket as he ran toward the wreck. The heat hit him first. That familiar wall of scorching air that brought back memories of desert patrols and burning Humvees. "Hey!" he shouted, dropping to his knees by the driver's side window. "Can you hear me?" Through the spider-webbed glass, he made out a woman's face, unconscious, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. The flames were spreading fast, eating their way toward the fuel tank. He had seconds, not minutes. Caleb wrapped his jacket around his fist and slammed it into the window. The safety glass spider-webbed further but held. He hit it again, harder, feeling the impact jar up his arm. On the third strike, the window finally gave way with a crash. The smoke was getting thicker now, making his eyes water as he reached inside. The woman hung limply in her seatbelt, dark hair falling across her face. Her skin felt cool under his fingers as he checked for a pulse. There, steady enough. The seatbelt release clicked easily, and he caught her weight as she slumped toward him. "I've got you," he murmured, though she couldn't hear him. "You're going to be okay." The heat was becoming unbearable as he carefully maneuvered her through the window frame, trying to protect her from the broken glass. She was slight in his arms, but dead weight. His muscles strained as he lifted her clear of the wreck and stumbled backward. The explosion came just as he turned away, the concussion throwing them both forward. Caleb twisted to take the impact on his shoulder, shielding the woman as best he could as they hit the wet grass. Heat washed over them in a wave, along with the acrid smell of burning fuel and melting plastic. For a moment, he just lay there, heart pounding, the woman cradled against his chest. The rain felt cool on his face as he caught his breath, checking to make sure she was still breathing steadily. In the distance, he could already hear sirens approaching. Someone must have called 911. He stayed with her until the paramedics arrived, keeping her still and protected from the rain with his jacket. Her face, despite the blood and the soot, held a sort of peaceful beauty that tugged at something in his chest. It had been a long time since he'd let himself notice things like that. The emergency vehicles arrived in a cascade of flashing lights and urgent voices. Paramedics swarmed around them, efficiently taking control of the situation. Caleb stepped back, suddenly feeling the ache in his shoulders and the trembling in his hands as the adrenaline began to fade. He gave his statement to a deputy while watching the paramedics work. They had the woman on a backboard now, carefully securing a neck brace. Their movements were practiced but not frantic, a good sign. She was stable, they said. She would live, thanks to his quick action. Firefighter Ben Collins approached, his turnout gear covered in foam and soot from dealing with the burning wreck. He clapped a hand on Caleb's shoulder, his face serious under his helmet. "You just saved her life," Collins said simply. "Another minute in there." He didn't need to finish the thought. Caleb nodded, watching as they loaded the woman into the ambulance. Her face was peaceful now under the oxygen mask, the blood cleaned away by careful hands. The emergency lights painted everything in alternating flashes of red and white, like some strange dream. The ambulance doors closed with a solid thunk. Caleb stood in the rain, soot streaking his face, and watched the vehicle pull away into the misty darkness. His hands were still trembling slightly, and his throat felt raw from the smoke. A strange emptiness settled over him as the flashing lights disappeared around the bend. The burning wreck, the intense focus of the rescue, it had all felt familiar in a way he tried not to think about too often. Like being back there, in the sand and heat, pulling brothers from burning vehicles. But this time, at least, he'd been fast enough. This time, he'd gotten there in time. Morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows of the Turner home, catching dust motes that danced in the golden beams. Caleb sat at his worn oak table, both hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee. His shoulders still ached from the previous night's rescue, a reminder that he wasn't as young as he used to be. The local morning news played quietly on the small TV mounted under the kitchen cabinet. Lily, his 15-year-old daughter, stood at the counter making toast, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She kept glancing at her father, with a mixture of pride and amusement. "Dad, look, you're on TV again." Lily pointed at the screen with her butter knife. There he was, covered in soot, being interviewed at the crash scene. The caption below read, "Local Mechanic's Heroic Rescue." Caleb took another sip of coffee, trying to hide his discomfort. They're making too big a deal of it. Anyone would have done the same thing. "Anyone?" Lily raised an eyebrow, looking so much like her mother, it made his heart catch. "The reporter said the car exploded like 30 seconds after you got her out." "That's pretty hardcore, Dad." "Lily," he started, but she was already pulling out her phone. "Everyone at school's talking about it. Hannah texted me that her mom saw it on Facebook, and that's enough about that," Caleb cut in, gentler than he felt. The attention made his skin crawl. He'd had enough spotlight during his medal ceremony after Afghanistan. "How about you focus on not being late for school instead?" Lily rolled her eyes, but grabbed her backpack. She kissed his cheek as she passed. "Fine, but you're still a hero. Deal with it." The screen door banged shut behind her, and Caleb was left alone with his thoughts and cooling coffee. An hour later, he pulled into the hospital parking lot. He hadn't planned to visit, but something drew him here. Maybe the need to know she was okay. Maybe something else he couldn't name. The automatic doors whispered open, and the familiar hospital smell hit him. Antiseptic and artificial air freshener. At the nurse's station, a middle-aged woman in purple scrubs looked up from her computer. Her name tag read, "Patricia. Can I help you?" she asked. Caleb cleared his throat. "I'm here about the woman from the car accident last night on Highway 27. I was wondering how she's doing." Recognition lit up Patricia's face. "Oh, you're the mechanic who pulled her out. We've been talking about that all morning." She typed something into her computer. "She's stable but still unconscious. Room 214, if you'd like to check on her." "I don't want to intrude. Honey, you saved her life. I think you've earned visiting rights." The elevator ride to the second floor gave Caleb time to question his decision to come. What was he doing here? The woman was a stranger. He'd done his part. Why not leave it at that? Room 214 was quiet, except for the steady beeping of monitors. The woman lay still against white sheets, looking smaller and more fragile than she had last night. The cut on her forehead had been cleaned and bandaged, and an IV dripped steadily into her arm. Her dark hair framed a face that seemed peaceful despite the circumstances. Caleb stood awkwardly by the door until a younger nurse brought in a chair. "You can sit," she offered with a kind smile. "Sometimes having someone nearby helps." He didn't mean to stay long, but something about the steady rhythm of her breathing and the soft monitor beeps lulled him into a strange calm. He found himself studying her face, trying to place why she seemed vaguely familiar. Had he seen her around town before? The morning stretched on. Nurses came and went, checking vitals and adjusting equipment. Caleb should have left for work, but he'd called Jerry to take a personal day. His first in 3 years. Jerry had practically ordered him to take it after seeing the news. Around noon, there was a change in her breathing. Caleb sat up straighter, watching as her eyelids fluttered. A small frown creased her forehead, and her fingers twitched against the sheets. He should call a nurse, he thought. Instead, he found himself leaning forward, drawn by some inexplicable force. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then sharpening as they found his face. Recognition flickered there, which made no sense. She shouldn't know him. Her lips parted, dry and pale, and Caleb had to lean closer to hear her whispered words. Caleb Turner. Her voice was hoarse but clear. I was following you. Ice shot down his spine. He jerked back, nearly knocking over the chair. How did she know his name? Why would she be following him? His combat instincts flared to life, scanning the room for threats even as he told himself he was being ridiculous. Who are you? He managed to ask, but her eyes were already closing again, medication pulling her back under. Her breathing evened out, leaving Caleb standing there with his heart pounding and too many questions. He backed out of the room, nearly colliding with a nurse in the hallway. The fluorescent lights suddenly seemed too bright, the air too thin. He made it to his truck just as the rain started again, fat drops hitting the windshield in an irregular pattern. Sitting behind the wheel, Caleb tried to make sense of what had just happened. She'd known his name. She'd been following him. But why? And for how long? The woman's face floated in his mind. The peaceful beauty he'd noticed last night now seemed mysterious, potentially dangerous. The rain picked up, drumming on the truck's roof, as Caleb drove home through the gray afternoon. Each mile brought new questions, rather than answers. Who was she? What did she want? The mystery of her identity and her cryptic words would give him no peace tonight. The morning sun painted long shadows across the quiet streets of their small Tennessee town as Caleb's old Ford pickup rumbled toward Lily's high school. His daughter sat beside him, her backpack clutched in her lap, dark hair falling across her face as she stared out the window. You're famous now, you know, Lily said, breaking their comfortable silence. She held up her phone, showing him the local news website. Look, local mechanic turns hero. There's even a video. Caleb grimaced, keeping his eyes on the road. They're making too much of it. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, Dad, not everyone would run into a burning car. Lily's voice carried a mix of pride and worry that made his heart twist. You could have gotten hurt, but I didn't, he said softly, reaching over to squeeze her hand. I'm right here, kiddo. They stopped at a red light, and Lily turned to face him fully. Her green eyes, so much like her mother's, held that determined look he knew all too well. Speaking of being here, Miss, Roberts from church asked about you again. Lily. His tone carried a gentle warning. She's nice, Dad. And she makes amazing chocolate chip cookies. I'm sure she does. It's been 5 years, Lily said quietly. Mom would have wanted. Some wounds aren't meant to heal that way, sweetheart. Caleb's voice was soft but final. The familiar ache in his chest deepened as he pulled up to the school drop-off zone. Lily leaned over and kissed his cheek. Love you, Dad. Even if you're impossible sometimes. Love you too. Have a good day at school. He watched her walk away, her backpack bouncing slightly with each step. The morning sun caught her hair, and for a moment she looked so much like Sarah that it took his breath away. 5 years since cancer had taken his wife, and sometimes the grief still felt fresh as yesterday. His phone rang just as he was pulling away from the school. The hospital's number flashed on his screen, and his heart rate picked up slightly. Mr. Turner? A nurse's voice came through. Elena Parker is asking to see you. The woman you rescued last night? Caleb's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Is she okay? She's stable and alert. She says it's important. 20 minutes later, Caleb stood outside room 214 at Memorial Hospital, He knocked softly before entering, unsure what to expect. Elena Parker sat propped up against white pillows, her dark hair framing a face marked with cuts and bruises. Despite her injuries, there was a quiet strength in her brown eyes that reminded him of the women he'd served with overseas. "Caleb Turner," she said, her voice stronger than he'd expected. "Thank you for coming, and thank you for saving my life." He shifted uncomfortably. "Anyone would have." "No," she interrupted gently. "They wouldn't have. Please, sit down." He lowered himself into the chair beside her bed, noting the IV lines and monitors surrounding her. "You said you were following me?" Elena nodded, wincing slightly at the movement. "I work for HopeLink. We're a veterans outreach organization. I've been trying to find you for weeks, but you're not an easy man to track down, Sergeant Turner." His military rank in her mouth made him stiffen. "That was a long time ago. Not to some people." She reached for a manila envelope on her bedside table, her movements careful and measured. "I have something for you. From Sergeant Aaron Miles." The name hit him like a physical blow. Images flashed through his mind. Sand and blood. The weight of Aaron's body in his arms. His friend's last smile. "That's not possible," he managed. "Aaron died 5 years ago. In Kandahar. He wrote this letter before his last mission." Elena's voice was gentle as she held out the envelope. "He gave it to his sister, with instructions to pass it on if anything happened to him. She recently found us, asking for help locating you." With trembling hands, Caleb took the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded carefully. He recognized Aaron's messy handwriting immediately. "Dear Caleb, if you're reading this, I guess I finally managed to do something you couldn't talk me out of. Don't you dare blame yourself. That's an order, Sergeant. I know you. You'll carry this like you carry everything. Alone and deep inside where you think no one can see. But God sees, brother. He sees your pain. And He's not finished with you yet. Remember what you told me when Sarah got sick? You said faith isn't about understanding the plan. It's about trusting the planner. Take your own advice for once. You've got so much light in you, Caleb. Don't let my death be the thing that dims it. Forgive yourself. Find the light that God's still shining on you. It's there, even if you can't see it right now. Tell Lily her Uncle Aaron loves her. And know that I'll be watching over both of you until we meet again. Your brother in arms. Aaron." Caleb's vision blurred. He carefully folded the letter and stood up, needing air suddenly. "I thank you for this. I need to." Elena nodded in understanding. "I'll be here if you want to talk later." He made it to the parking lot before the tears came, hot and unexpected. The gray sky above seemed to mirror his turbulent emotions as Aaron's words echoed in his mind. He looked up, letting the cool morning air wash over his face. "Aaron," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "What are you trying to tell me?" Caleb wiped his greasy hands on a shop rag and pulled Aaron's letter from his back pocket for what felt like the 100th time that morning. The crisp white paper had already started to soften at the creases from his constant handling. Sunlight streamed through the open garage door of Turner's Auto Repair, catching dust motes that danced in the air as he read the familiar words again. "Your heart was always bigger than your common sense, brother," Aaron had written. "Don't let what happened that day steal the light God put in you." The rumble of an approaching car made him quickly fold the letter away. But instead of a customer, he saw Elena Parker carefully stepping out of a taxi, steadying herself with a wooden cane. Her face still showed fading bruises, but her eyes were bright and determined as she made her way toward him. "Mr. Turner," she called out with a warm smile. "I hope I'm not interrupting your work." "Just Caleb," he corrected, grabbing a clean rag to wipe his hands properly. "And no interruption. How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck," Elena chuckled, then winced slightly. "But alive, thanks to you." She looked around the garage with interest. "Nice shop you have here." "It keeps me busy." Caleb gestured to a couple of old chairs near his workbench. "Would you like to sit? You probably shouldn't be walking too much yet." Elena gratefully lowered herself into one of the chairs. "The doctor said movement is good. In moderation. I wanted to come thank you properly. The hospital wasn't really the best place for a real conversation. Caleb sat across from her, suddenly aware of the oil stains on his coveralls. No thanks needed. Anyone would have done the same. We both know that's not true. Elena's voice was gentle but firm. Most people would have called 911 and waited. You ran into a burning car. A comfortable silence settled between them as Caleb absorbed her words. The familiar sounds of the shop, the tick of cooling engines, the whir of the overhead fan, filled the space. Your car, he said finally. I could take a look at it, fix it up for you. No charge. Elena shook her head. That's very kind, but I insist on paying. You've already done more than enough. At least let me give you the friends and family discount, Caleb found himself saying, surprised by his own persistence. Are we friends now? Elena's eyes crinkled with amusement. Well, I did pull you out of a burning vehicle. Seems like that should count for something. They both laughed, and Caleb realized it had been a long time since he'd felt this kind of easy connection with someone. Tell you what, Elena said, let me buy you lunch, and we can negotiate your rates. Before he knew it, they were settled into a booth at Mary's Diner down the street. The lunch crowd had thinned out, leaving them in relative quiet except for the soft clink of coffee cups and the oldies playing on the jukebox. So, Elena said, stirring sugar into her iced tea, do you believe in divine timing, Caleb? He shifted in his seat, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Not much anymore. I do, she continued. I've been trying to find you for weeks, carrying Aaron's letter. Then my car breaks down, rather dramatically, right in front of you. She smiled. That's more than coincidence. Caleb stared into his coffee. With all due respect, miss. Parker, Elena, she corrected. Elena, I've seen too much to believe in that kind of thing anymore. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Aaron told me you might say that. In his last email to me, he mentioned how much the war changed you, how it stole your faith. Caleb's head snapped up. You knew Aaron? He was my brother's best friend in high school. When my brother struggled after his own deployment, Aaron was there for him. That's why I joined HopeLink, to help other veterans like my brother. The waitress arrived with their sandwiches, giving Caleb a moment to process this new information. The connection to Aaron felt both painful and somehow right, like pressing on an old wound to help it heal. I'm not looking to push anything on you, Elena said softly. But maybe there's a reason we're both here. Now. Maybe we're supposed to help each other heal. Caleb wanted to dismiss it, to fall back on the comfortable cynicism that had protected him for so long. But something in her words reached past his defenses, planting a tiny seed of hope he thought had died years ago. The rest of lunch passed in easier conversation. Elena told him about her work with veterans, and he found himself sharing stories about Lily, about the shop, about the small life he'd built since coming home. The sun was painting the sky in shades of pink and orange when Caleb finally turned his truck into his driveway. The house lights were on, and through the window he could see Lily moving around the kitchen. The familiar sight filled him with warmth. He walked in to find her, setting plates of spaghetti on the table, the smell of garlic bread filling the air. You're home late, she said, but her tone was teasing rather than accusatory. I saw your truck at Mary's earlier. With company. Just helping out a client, he mumbled, hanging up his jacket. Uh-huh. Lily's grin widened. You're smiling again, Dad. Caleb touched his face, surprised to find she was right. The corners of his mouth had indeed turned up without his permission. He didn't deny it. The fluorescent lights of Turner's Auto Repair cast long shadows across the empty parking lot as Caleb finished his final walkthrough. His boots echoed on the concrete floor as he checked each bay one last time. The day's work had been steady, but his mind kept drifting to Elena and Aaron's letter, making even routine tasks take longer than usual. He clicked off the lights and pulled the heavy metal door shut, the familiar clang of the lock echoing in the quiet night. The Tennessee summer air hung thick and humid around him as crickets chirped their evening chorus. His old Ford pickup sat alone in the gravel lot, moonlight gleaming off its faded blue paint. As he approached the driver's side, something white caught his eye. A piece of paper was tucked beneath the windshield wiper, fluttering slightly in the evening breeze. Caleb's heart skipped a beat as he plucked it free. The paper was plain white computer paper, folded once, with a message typed in stark, black letters. "Keep quiet about the woman, or you'll regret it." The paper trembled in his hands as memories of combat flooded back that familiar surge of adrenaline, the heightened awareness of every shadow. Elena's face flashed through his mind. Without hesitation, he jumped into his truck and fired up the engine, tires spitting gravel as he pulled onto the main road. The Mountain View Motel sat just off Highway 27, its neon vacancy sign casting a pale red glow across the nearly empty parking lot. Caleb spotted Elena's rental car parked outside room 112. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel as he pulled up beside it. Before he could even knock, Elena yanked the door open. Her face was pale, hair disheveled, eyes wide with fear. The small room behind her was a mess, drawers pulled open, clothes scattered across the bed. "Someone broke in while I was getting dinner," she whispered, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "They went through everything." Caleb's jaw clenched as he showed her the note. Elena's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh God," she breathed. "They found me." "Pack your things," Caleb said firmly. "You're coming home with me." "Caleb, no, I can't put you and Lily in danger. You'll be in more danger here alone." His voice softened. "Please, let me help." Elena hesitated, then nodded slowly. Together they gathered her scattered belongings, stuffing everything into her suitcase while Caleb kept watch at the window. The night felt suddenly hostile, full of lurking threats. 20 minutes later, they pulled into Caleb's driveway. The porch light was on, and through the window, he could see Lily on the couch watching TV. The sight of his daughter made his protective instincts surge even stronger. "Wait here," he told Elena, heading inside first to explain the situation. Lily sat up straight when he entered, immediately sensing something was wrong. "Dad, what's going on?" "Elena needs a safe place to stay for a while," he said carefully. "Someone's trying to frighten her." Lily's eyes widened. "The woman from the crash? Is she okay?" "She will be. But I need you to be understanding about this, sweetheart. It's just temporary until the police sort things out." To his surprise, Lily's face lit up. "Of course she should stay!" "I'll help get the guest room ready." Relief washed over him as he watched his daughter spring into action, pulling fresh sheets from the linen closet. He went back out to help Elena with her bags, touched by how quickly Lily had pushed aside any teenage suspicion to welcome a stranger in need. The guest room was small but cozy, with a quilted bed and lace curtains that Sarah, his late wife, had picked out years ago. Lily had already turned down the bed and was showing Elena where to find extra towels in the bathroom. "Thank you both so much," Elena said softly, her eyes still holding traces of fear, despite her grateful smile. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Lily assured her. "Dad always says helping people is just what you do." She shot her father a proud look that made his chest tighten. After making sure Elena had everything she needed, Lily gave her an impulsive hug before heading off to bed. Caleb lingered in the doorway, watching Elena set her suitcase in the corner. "Try to get some rest," he said. "You're safe here." Elena nodded, managing a small smile. "Thank you, Caleb, for everything." He stepped back into the hallway, but paused, one hand on the doorframe. For the first time since Sarah died, he felt the weight of responsibility for protecting not just Lily, but someone else who needed him. Without conscious thought, his head bowed slightly, and words he hadn't spoken in years came naturally to his lips. "Lord," he whispered, "watch over this house tonight. Keep them safe." His voice caught on the last word, surprising him with its emotion. He closed the door quietly and stood there a moment longer, listening to the familiar creaks and settling sounds of his home. Whatever trouble was coming, they would face it together. For now, that would have to be enough. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows of the Turner home, casting warm squares of light across the worn linoleum floor. The sweet aroma of pancakes filled the air as Lily stood at the stove, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, determinedly flipping another golden brown circle onto an already impressive stack. "The secret is letting the bubbles get just right before you flip them," Lily explained to Elena, who watched from her perch at the kitchen counter, still moving carefully from her injuries. Dad always tries to flip them too early. That's why his pancakes look like scrambled eggs. I heard that, Caleb called from the living room, a hint of amusement in his voice. He appeared in the doorway, coffee mug in hand, his usual stern expression softened by the morning's peaceful domesticity. Elena smiled, reaching for the butter dish. Well, these look perfect to me. You're quite the chef, Lily. Oh, this is nothing. You should see my mac and cheese. It's basically famous in 3 households. Lily's attempt at a serious face crumbled as she giggled, and Elena joined in. The sound of their shared laughter seemed to catch Caleb off guard. He couldn't remember the last time such genuine joy had filled these walls. Something in his chest loosened. Just a little. Dad, sit down already. Your hovering is making me nervous, Lily commanded, pointing her spatula at him like a weapon. Yes, ma'am, he replied, raising his hands in mock surrender. He settled at the table beside Elena, who was already arranging plates and syrup. The peaceful moment shattered at the sound of a car door closing outside. Caleb was on his feet instantly, muscle memory from his military days kicking in as he moved to the window. A police cruiser sat in the driveway. Stay here, he told Elena and Lily, his voice shifting from relaxed to alert in an instant. He opened the front door to find Detective Mason on his porch, his weathered face grave despite the cheerful morning. Morning, Turner. Sorry to interrupt your breakfast. Mind if I come in? Caleb led him to the kitchen, where Lily had turned off the stove and was hovering protectively near Elena. The detective's presence seemed to fill the small space, making it feel cramped despite his average build. Miss Parker, Mason nodded to Elena. How are you feeling? Better, thank you, Elena replied, unconsciously touching the healing cut on her forehead. Mason pulled out a chair, his movements deliberate. I've got some news about your accident, though I'm afraid accident isn't the right word anymore. The kitchen went silent. Even the birds outside seemed to pause their morning songs. What do you mean? Caleb asked, his voice low and controlled. Our forensics team finished examining what was left of your car, Miss Parker. Mason pulled out a small notebook. The brake lines were deliberately cut. Clean job, too. Professional work. This wasn't random vandalism. Elena's face paled. Lily reached over and grabbed her hand, squeezing it tight. There's more, Mason continued, his eyes meeting Caleb's. We found traces of brake fluid in the parking lot of your motel. Whoever did this watched, waited, and chose their moment. Caleb's jaw tightened. This is about your work with the veterans, isn't it? He asked Elena. She nodded slowly. I've been investigating irregularities in the VA housing program. Several veterans have gone missing after reporting problems with their benefits. I thought I was being careful, but... She trailed off, her hands trembling slightly. You've stirred up something bigger than missing paperwork, Mason said grimly. My advice? Watch your backs. Both of you. He looked pointedly at Caleb. Whoever's behind this knows you're involved now, too. Let them come, Caleb said quietly, his voice carrying the steady certainty of a man who'd faced danger before. Mason stood, adjusting his jacket. I've got officers looking into the VA angle. In the meantime, stay alert. Call me if anything seems off, even small things. Caleb walked him to the door, their conversation dropping to murmurs. When he returned to the kitchen, Elena was staring at her hands, lost in thought. I should leave, she said softly. I'm putting you all in danger. No. Caleb's response was immediate and firm. He moved to stand beside her chair, his presence solid and reassuring. You're staying right here where I can protect you. This isn't random anymore. They're targeting you for trying to help people who serve their country. That makes it my fight, too. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. A current of understanding, trust, and shared purpose. The morning sun caught Elena's face, highlighting the determination beneath her fear. Lily broke the tension by sliding a plate of slightly cold pancakes between them. Well, if we're going to fight bad guys, we should at least do it on full stomachs. The simple statement, so practical and oddly normal in the face of their situation, startled a laugh out of both adults. The sound seemed to push back against the shadows that Mason's news had brought, reminding them that even in darkness, there was still room for light. A gentle spring breeze rustled through the towering maple trees outside the Turner home as another week settled into a comfortable rhythm that felt both foreign and deeply right. The morning air carried the sweet scent of blooming dogwood and fresh grass, while birds chirped their cheerful songs from the branches overhead. Elena had transformed the small guest room into a makeshift office, her silver laptop now surrounded by towering stacks of veterans' case files that threatened to topple over with each gentle breeze from the open window. The warm morning light filtered through the pale yellow curtains Sarah had hung years ago, casting dancing shadows across the wall, as Elena typed with determined purpose, her slender fingers moving across the keyboard with the practiced efficiency of someone who had typed countless reports and letters of advocacy. Down in the cluttered garage that smelled of motor oil and old leather, Caleb worked methodically on Elena's damaged sedan, the familiar sounds of wrenches clanking and classic rock radio filling the spacious workshop. He'd insisted on doing all the repairs himself, not trusting a single soul after learning about the deliberate sabotage that had nearly cost Elena her life. The honest work gave his calloused hands purpose and his restless mind the kind of peace he hadn't felt in years. Each bolt he tightened, and every dent he carefully hammered out, felt like an act of protection, a way to keep her safe, even when she wasn't there beside him. Lily had taken to bringing them both lunch every day around noon, usually thick sandwiches stuffed with turkey and cheese, along with tall glasses of fresh lemonade that sparkled in the afternoon sun. She would linger in doorways, watching with quiet satisfaction and barely concealed delight as the two adults in her life found an easy companionship that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. Their old golden retriever, Max, had appointed himself Elena's personal guardian and constant shadow, following her faithfully from room to room with the devoted attention of a loyal sentry, his tail wagging whenever she spoke his name. One peaceful evening, after Lily had trudged upstairs to tackle her mountain of algebra homework, Caleb and Elena found themselves sitting together on the weathered back porch swing that creaked gently with their movement. The setting sun painted the endless sky in soft shades of orange and pink that stretched across the horizon like watercolor brushstrokes. Max dozed contentedly at their feet, his gray muzzle resting on his paws, his tail thumping occasionally against the wooden deck boards whenever he heard their voices. "Thank you," Elena said softly, her voice barely louder than the evening breeze that stirred the wind chimes hanging from the porch eave. "For everything you've done this week. For taking me in, for fixing my car, for making me feel like I belong somewhere again." Caleb shrugged his broad shoulders, his work-roughened hands wrapped securely around a steaming mug of black coffee that had grown lukewarm in the cooling air. "Seems like the least I could do after what you've been through." "No," Elena said, turning to face him fully as she touched his forearm, with a gentleness that made his breath catch. "It's not just about giving me a place to stay or a roof over my head. It's about having somewhere that feels truly safe again. Somewhere I can breathe without looking over my shoulder every few minutes." The touch lingered longer than necessary, warm and comforting, and Caleb felt something shift deep in his chest, like an old wall beginning to crack and crumble after years of standing guard around his heart. The evening crickets filled the comfortable silence that stretched between them, their chorus rising and falling like a natural symphony. "I still see them sometimes," Caleb said finally, his voice rough with emotion and memories he rarely shared. "In my dreams, clear as day. The guys from my unit, Aaron especially. He's always there, looking at me like he's waiting for something." Elena waited patiently, giving him all the space and time he needed to continue, her presence steady and reassuring beside him. "We were on patrol near Kandahar, on a day that started like any other," Caleb continued, his eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the darkening yard. "The heat was brutal, over 100 degrees, and we'd been walking for hours. Aaron spotted the IED first, always had the sharpest eyes in the unit. Caleb's hands tightened around his coffee mug until his knuckles went white. He didn't hesitate for even a second, just pushed me out of the way with everything he had, took the full blast himself while I landed in the dirt, alive and barely scratched. I keep thinking if I'd been more alert, if I'd seen it first, if I'd been the one walking point that day. My brother Michael had similar nightmares after his tours, Elena said quietly, her own voice thick with remembered pain. The same guilt, the same what-ifs, that never stops circling in your mind. Caleb turned to look at her fully, seeing the deep pain etched in her delicate features, the way her eyes held shadows that matched his own. He seemed perfectly fine when he first came home from his second deployment, Elena continued, her voice growing softer with each word. Went right back to his job at the lumber yard, started dating his old girlfriend again. Even talked about getting married and having kids. But the nights were different. The nights were hard. He'd wake up screaming at 2 a.m, drenched in sweat, calling out names of soldiers who didn't make it home. He started drinking beer to sleep, then whiskey, then anything he could find to numb the memories. Her voice cracked like thin ice. I tried everything to get him help. Called the VA, drove him to appointments, even offered to pay for private counseling. But he kept insisting he was handling it just fine, that he didn't need anyone's pity or charity. Then, one morning in October, he just didn't wake up. Empty pill bottle on the nightstand, half a bottle of bourbon on the floor. Caleb reached over without thinking and took her small hand in his larger one, their fingers intertwining naturally, like they'd been doing it for years instead of just days. Her skin was soft and warm, and he could feel her pulse fluttering against his palm. That's exactly why I started working with veterans outreach programs, Elena said, looking down at their joined hands. I couldn't save Michael, couldn't reach him in time. But maybe I could help others like him. Like you. Maybe I could keep other families from going through what mine did. Like me? Caleb's voice was barely a whisper, rough with emotion. I see how you carry it every single day, Caleb, Elena said, meeting his eyes with a directness that took his breath away. The guilt that sits on your shoulders, like a heavy pack you can never set down. The feeling that you don't deserve to be happy or at peace because others didn't make it home to their families. But surviving doesn't make you guilty of anything except being human. You honor their sacrifice by living fully, by being present for Lily, by opening your heart again. That's exactly what Aaron's letter was trying to tell you. They sat together in understanding silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deeper shades of purple and gold. Max stirred and lifted his graying head to rest it on Elena's knee, and she scratched gently behind his ears with her free hand while never letting go of Caleb's with the other. Later, as had become their cherished routine, they took their usual evening walk with Lily and Max around the quiet neighborhood streets. The old-fashioned streetlights cast warm, welcoming pools of golden light on the cracked sidewalk as Lily chattered enthusiastically about her day at school, her backpack bouncing against her shoulder with each animated step. Elena listened intently to every word, asking thoughtful questions about her classes and friends and weekend plans, while Caleb watched them both with a growing warmth spreading through his chest like sunrise breaking over mountains. When they returned home with Max panting happily beside them, Lily hugged them both tightly before heading upstairs to finish her homework. Good night, Dad. Good night, Elena. Thanks for listening to all my boring school stories. The casual, natural way she included Elena in their nightly routine made something catch powerfully in Caleb's throat. He stood in the front hallway, watching his daughter disappear up the stairs, 2 at a time, amazed at how naturally their broken little family had expanded to include one more heart without any awkwardness or forced effort. That night, as Caleb lay in his childhood bedroom staring at the ceiling fan that turned slowly overhead, he didn't feel the usual crushing weight of dark memories pressing down on his chest like stones. Instead, he found himself remembering Elena's small hand in his, the musical sound of Lily's genuine laughter as Max chased a bold squirrel during their walk, the way the evening light had painted everything they passed in warm gold that made the whole world look blessed and new. For the first time, in longer than he could remember, his restless mind was finally quiet. The ghosts that usually haunted his dreams and followed him through sleepless nights seemed to have given him a blessed reprieve, stepping back into whatever shadows they came from. He drifted off to sleep peacefully, with the echo of shared laughter still ringing in his ears, feeling something he hadn't felt in 5 long years, genuine hope for tomorrow. His last conscious thought before sleep claimed him was of Elena's gentle words about honoring sacrifices by living fully, instead of just surviving. Maybe, just maybe, she was absolutely right. Perhaps it was finally time to stop hiding from life and let the light back into the dark corners of his guarded heart. The Saturday morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows as Elena stood at the counter, pouring coffee into 3 mismatched mugs. Lily sat cross-legged on the couch, absorbed in her phone, while Caleb tinkered with the toaster that had been acting up all week. "I've been thinking," Elena said, passing Caleb his coffee. Her voice held that tone of gentle determination he'd come to recognize. "What if we organized a veterans charity car show right here in town?" Caleb's hand stilled on the toaster. "A car show? To honor your unit," Elena continued, settling into a kitchen chair. "We could raise money for veteran housing programs, and—" she hesitated before adding softly, "maybe create a scholarship in Aaron's name." Caleb's jaw tightened. He set down his screwdriver and walked to the window, staring out at the familiar view of his backyard. The old oak tree where he'd built Lily's swing cast morning shadows across the dewy grass. "I don't know, Elena. That's stirring up a lot of—" He trailed off, unable to find the right words. "Dad." Lily's voice cut through his hesitation. She'd moved from the couch to stand beside him, her teenage face serious. "Maybe it's time to stir things up a little." He looked at his daughter, seeing so much of her mother in her earnest expression. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just never listen," Lily teased, bumping his shoulder with hers. Elena watched their interaction, a small smile playing at her lips. "The whole town could get involved. We could have local businesses sponsor different aspects. Your auto shop could be the centerpiece. Turner & Sons has the biggest lot in town," Lily added enthusiastically. "And you know everyone with a classic car within 50 miles. Caleb ran a hand through his graying hair, his resistance beginning to crack. "It would take a lot of organizing." "Good thing you have me," Elena said, her eyes twinkling. "Planning events is part of my job at HopeLink." 2 hours later, they sat in Mayor Thompson's office, the morning sunshine warming the wood-paneled walls. The mayor, a jovial man with silver hair and reading glasses perpetually perched on his nose, listened intently as Elena outlined their proposal. "A veterans charity car show," Mayor Thompson repeated, leaning back in his chair, "with proceeds going to homeless veteran programs and a scholarship fund." "I like it. Could bring the whole community together." "We'd need the town square for the main display," Elena explained, spreading out a rough sketch she'd made. "Local restaurants could set up food stands, maybe have live music." As Elena spoke, Caleb found himself drawn into the possibilities. He could picture it clearly. Gleaming classic cars lined up along Main Street, American flags waving in the breeze, families gathered together. A way to honor Aaron that felt right. The planning meeting expanded to include Sarah from the Chamber of Commerce and Pete, who owned the local hardware store. They gathered around a large table at the community center, surrounded by notes and ideas. "My cousin's band could play," Pete offered. "They do great covers of old country songs." "The diner could do a special menu," Sarah added. "Theme it around different military branches." Caleb watched Elena in her element, coordinating and suggesting, her eyes bright with purpose. She'd pulled her dark hair back in a loose braid, and she gestured animatedly as she spoke. Something warm stirred in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. Their eyes met across the table, and for a moment, the rest of the room seemed to fade away. Elena's cheeks flushed slightly, and she quickly looked down at her notes. As the afternoon wore on, the event took shape. Local businesses pledged support, volunteers signed up for committees, and a date was set for 6 weeks away. "This is really happening," Caleb murmured as people began packing up their things. "Thanks to you," Elena said, gathering her papers. "Me? This was all your idea. But it's your story that's bringing people together." She paused, looking up at him. "You inspire people more than you know, Caleb." The evening air had cooled when they finally stepped outside. Someone had strung white lights along the community center's porch, creating a soft glow in the gathering dusk. They stood there for a moment, neither quite ready to head home. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, protective against the slight chill. "You know," she said softly, "that night on Highway 27. You gave me my life back. Caleb turned to look at her, his heart beating a little faster at her proximity. The string lights reflected in her eyes, making them sparkle. He thought about how she'd brought laughter back into his home, how she'd helped Lily open up again, how she'd given him a reason to believe in something bigger than his grief. Maybe, he said, his voice rough with emotion, "You're giving me mine!" The words hung between them in the gentle Tennessee twilight, full of possibility and unspoken hope. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Caleb stood at his kitchen window, coffee growing cold in his hands. The dark clouds matched his mood. For the second time this week, he spotted that same black SUV crawling past his house. Tinted windows, no plates he could read. His military instincts screamed danger. Lily and Elena sat at the kitchen table, going over decorations for the upcoming charity car show. Their excited chatter about streamers and banners felt surreal against his growing unease. "Dad, what do you think about blue and silver for the theme colors?" Lily asked. Caleb forced a smile. "Sounds perfect, sweetheart." His eyes drifted back to the street, scanning for the SUV. Elena noticed his distraction. She set down her notebook and studied him with concern. "Caleb, what's wrong?" He sighed, setting his mug in the sink. "That vehicle's back again. Black SUV. Drove by, real slow." Elena's face paled slightly, but she kept her voice steady for Lily's sake. "Maybe they're just lost? Twice in 1 week?" Caleb shook his head. "Lily, why don't you go finish your homework? I need to talk to Elena for a minute." Once Lily was upstairs, Caleb pulled out his phone and dialed Detective Mason's number. The detective answered on the second ring. "Mason here." "Detective, it's Caleb Turner. That SUV I mentioned? It's back again." "Get a plate number this time?" "No, but it's definitely the same vehicle. Dark windows, newer model. I'll God." "Send a patrol car to circle your neighborhood every hour," Mason assured him. "You still have that security system armed?" "Yes, sir, and I've been checking the cameras daily." "Good man. Call immediately if you spot it again." After hanging up, Caleb turned to Elena. She sat with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, thunder growing louder outside. "There's something you need to know," she said quietly, his stomach clenched. "What is it?" "I've been getting emails. Threats." She pulled out her phone, hands trembling slightly as she showed him the screen. "They want me to drop the VA housing investigation." Caleb read through the messages, his jaw tightening with each one. They were specific, menacing. Whoever sent them knew details about Elena's work and movements. "Why didn't you tell me about these?" His voice came out harder than intended. "I didn't want to worry you more." Elena stood and paced to the window. "You've already done so much, taking us in, protecting us." "Elena," he crossed to her in 3 quick strides, "these people cut your brake lines. They broke into your motel room, and now they're watching my house, where my daughter lives." Lightning flickered outside, illuminating the fear in her eyes. "You have to back off this investigation." She shook her head firmly. "I can't. Don't you see? These veterans they're exploiting. They're just like Aaron." "Just like your unit. Men and women who gave everything for their country, only to come home and be taken advantage of when they're most vulnerable." Her voice cracked. "If I stop now, they win." "And if something happens to you?" The words came out raw, revealing more than he'd meant to. Elena's eyes softened. She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her light floral perfume. "I'm not afraid," she whispered. "Well, I am." The admission surprised them both. His hand moved of its own accord, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I can't lose." He stopped, unable to finish. The thunder crashed directly overhead, making them both jump. The moment shattered, but something had shifted between them. Fear and affection tangling together like the storm outside. "I should check on Lily," Elena said softly, stepping back. "Storms make her anxious." Caleb nodded, watching her climb the stairs. Once she was gone, he moved back to his post at the window. Rain now pounded against the glass, distorting his view of the street. His phone felt heavy in his pocket, a lifeline to Detective Mason if needed. Lightning flashed again, bright enough to leave spots in his vision. In that brief illumination, he searched the shadows of his familiar street turned alien by darkness and rain. His free hand clenched into a fist at his side. "Not this time," he whispered to the storm. "No one hurts her again." The morning sun painted the town square in shades of gold, burning away the last wisps of dawn mist. Caleb adjusted his tie in the hallway mirror, his hands trembling slightly. Behind him, Lily bounded down the stairs in her new blue dress, her eyes bright with excitement. "Dad, you look amazing." She straightened his tie with practiced ease. "Elena's already at the square. She said everything's ready." Caleb nodded, trying to calm his nerves. The past few weeks of planning had transformed their small Tennessee town. Vintage cars lined the streets, their chrome gleaming in the morning light. Red, white, and blue bunting draped every storefront, and a massive banner stretched across Main Street. Veterans Hope Car Show, honoring our heroes. When they arrived at the square, Caleb's breath caught in his throat. Hundreds of people milled about, familiar faces from town, veterans in their service caps, families with children darting between the display cars. The turnout was beyond anything they'd imagined. Elena spotted them and hurried over, radiant in a yellow sundress. "You made it!" She hugged Lily, then squeezed Caleb's arm. "Wait until you see everything." The three of them walked through the show together. Every few steps, someone stopped Caleb to shake his hand or share a memory. Old army buddies he hadn't seen in years, parents of soldiers he'd served with. Each encounter lifted another small weight from his shoulders. Near the center of the square, Elena guided them to a booth, draped in patriotic colors. A large photo of Aaron Miles smiled down at them. Young, proud, forever frozen in time. Beside it stood an elegantly framed certificate. "This is my surprise," Elena said softly. She took Caleb's hand. "The Sergeant Aaron Miles Memorial Scholarship Fund for Children of Fallen Veterans." Caleb stared at the certificate, emotion closing his throat. The fund would ensure that kids like Aaron's daughter would have help with college. It was exactly what his friend would have wanted. "How did you?" he managed. "The donations poured in once people heard your story," Elena explained. "Everyone wanted to help. This town has so much love to give, Caleb. They were just waiting for someone to show them how." The morning flew by in a blur of handshakes and hugs. Classic cars rumbled their deep engines. Children ran with red, white, and blue pinwheels. The air smelled of barbecue and hope. At noon, Mayor Thompson called everyone to gather around the main stage. Hundreds of faces turned expectantly toward Caleb as he climbed the steps to the microphone. His prepared speech felt heavy in his pocket, but when he looked out at the crowd, different words came. "5 years ago," he began, his voice rough with emotion, "I came home from war, believing I'd left the best parts of myself behind. I couldn't see past the guilt of surviving when better men didn't. I couldn't feel God's presence anymore." The square grew silent. Even the children stopped playing to listen. But sometimes grace finds us in the strangest ways. His eyes found Elena in the crowd. Sometimes it takes a car crash on a rainy night to show us that every breath is crash, a second chance. That hope never really dies. It just waits for us to be ready to see it again. Tears glistened on many faces now. Lily beamed up at him, pride shining in her eyes. "Sergeant Aaron Miles died saving my life in Afghanistan. His last letter to me said, 'To find the light, God's still shining.' It took me years to understand what he meant." Caleb's voice grew stronger. That light isn't just about survival. It's about living fully. It's about letting love back in. It's about believing that even our deepest wounds can become windows for grace to enter. When he finished speaking, the applause rolled across the square like thunder. Veterans stood at attention, saluting. Families embraced. Something had shifted in the air, as if the whole town had collectively exhaled years of held breath. The afternoon passed in a golden haze. As the crowd thinned and the sun began to set, Caleb found Elena standing beneath the Hope Never Dies banner. She turned to him with tears in her eyes. "That speech," she whispered, "you gave them all permission to heal. You gave me permission first," he said quietly. The last rays of sunlight caught in her hair as he leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle, tender, a kiss that felt like coming home after a long journey. When they parted, her smile held all the warmth of summer. Later that night, Caleb sat on the edge of Lily's bed, just like he had every night since she was small. But tonight felt different. Lighter. "Dad?" She yawned, snuggling into her pillow. "I saw you kiss Elena." "Yeah?" He smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "That okay with you?" She nodded sleepily. "She makes you smile again. Real smiles." Caleb kissed her forehead. "Maybe we're finally okay," he whispered. Lily drifted off to sleep, peaceful and secure. Caleb watched her for a moment, feeling truly at peace for the first time in years. The day had been perfect. More than perfect. It felt like a new beginning. The morning light crept through the guest room window, casting long shadows across the unmade bed. Caleb stood frozen in the doorway, his coffee mug nearly slipping from his grip. Elena's bed was empty, sheets pulled back hastily. The closet door hung open, her few belongings gone. "Elena?" His voice echoed through the silent house. No answer. Heart pounding, he checked the bathroom, the kitchen, the living room. Her phone wasn't on the charger where she always left it. Her small travel bag had vanished. Even the leather journal she wrote in every morning was missing from its usual spot on the windowsill. Lily appeared behind him, still in her pajamas. "Dad? What's wrong?" "Elena's gone." The words felt like stones in his mouth. "Did you hear anything last night?" Lily shook her head, worry creasing her young face. "No." Could she have gone for an early walk? But Caleb knew better. Elena never left without telling them, especially not after the threats. He pulled out his phone, dialing her number. It went straight to voicemail. "Stay here," he told Lily, grabbing his keys. "Lock the doors. I'll call you soon." The morning air was crisp as he jumped into his truck. He drove first to the diner where they often had breakfast, then to the Veterans Center where she volunteered. No one had seen her. His calls to Detective Mason went unanswered. Main Street was quiet, most shops still closed after yesterday's festivities. Banners from the car show fluttered in the breeze, cruel reminders of yesterday's joy. He turned toward the old steel bridge on River Road, where Elena liked to walk when she needed to think. His heart stopped when he saw her silver Honda pulled off to the side, driver's door hanging open like a broken wing. He slammed on his brakes, gravel crunching under his tires. "Elena!" His shout scattered a few birds from nearby trees. The car was empty. His trained eye caught details that made his blood run cold. Scuff marks on the pavement, a small smear of blood on the leather seat. Her purse lay spilled across the passenger side floor. A piece of paper caught his eye, crumpled and half hidden under the seat. His hands shook as he smoothed it out. "I'm sorry. I couldn't tell you everything." The words blurred as memories flooded back. The explosion in Afghanistan. Aaron's body shielding him. The promise he'd made to never let anyone else die because of him. Now Elena. His phone rang, making him jump. Detective Mason's gruff voice came through. "Turner, we've been trying to reach you." Elena's car was spotted. "I'm already here," Caleb cut in. "At the bridge. There's blood, Mason. Someone took her." A heavy pause. "Listen carefully. We've been investigating corruption in the VA housing program." Elena wasn't just doing outreach. She was gathering evidence, names, dates, proof of funds being diverted from veteran housing projects. She must have gotten too close. Caleb's free hand clenched into a fist. "Why didn't she tell me?" "To protect you and Lily. The people behind this, they're dangerous. They've already silenced 2 whistleblowers." Rain began to fall, fat drops hitting the windshield. Caleb watched them trail down the glass, like tears. "I should have known. Should have protected her better." "This isn't your fault," Mason said firmly. "We've got units searching. Head home. Stay with your daughter. Let us handle this." But Caleb wasn't listening anymore. His mind was already racing, connecting dots. Elena's late-night phone calls, the mysterious emails, the dark SUV that had been following them. She'd been trying to help veterans like him, like his fallen brothers, and now she was paying the price. He climbed back into his truck, rain soaking through his shirt. The engine roared to life as thunder rolled in the distance. His hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. "Hold on, Elena," he whispered into the storm. "I'm coming." The wipers beat a steady rhythm as he pulled away from the bridge, leaving Elena's empty car behind, a lonely sentinel in the growing storm. Detective Mason's words about staying home faded against the soldier's determination burning in his chest. He'd lost too many people already. He wouldn't lose her, too. The fluorescent lights of Street Mary's hospital cast long shadows across the empty corridors as Caleb walked the same path he'd taken just weeks ago. His footsteps echoed against the linoleum floors, each step a reminder of that first night when Elena had whispered his name. Now she was gone, and the sterile halls felt colder than ever. At the nurse's station, Martha, the night nurse who'd been there during Elena's stay, recognized him immediately. "Mr. Turner, what brings you back so late?" "Elena Parker," Caleb said, his voice rough with worry. "She stayed in room 214. I need to know if she left anything behind, made any calls, anything that might help find her." Martha's face softened with concern. "Let me check her records." Her fingers moved across the keyboard. She made several calls from the room, phone, and... Martha paused, lowering her voice. She used the hospital computer to send herself some files, said it was work-related. "I probably shouldn't tell you this, but she seemed nervous that day." Caleb leaned forward. "Which computer?" Martha pointed to a small office near the waiting area. "That one. It's for patient use. I'm about to go on break if you need a few minutes alone." She gave him a meaningful look and walked away. In the empty office, Caleb sat at the computer. His hands shook slightly as he pulled up the email system's login page. Elena had mentioned using a simple pattern for her passwords, combining important dates with her brother's initials. After 3 attempts, he was in. The screen filled with emails, most routine work correspondence. But one caught his eye, sent to herself just days ago, with no subject line and a large attachment. When he opened it, rows of numbers and names filled the bud. Screen, housing grant applications, financial records, and transfer documents, all pointing to systematic fraud. "Dear God," Caleb muttered, scrolling through the data. Hundreds of veterans had been denied housing while funds disappeared into shell companies. At the center of it all was one name that appeared repeatedly: Harold Denton. Caleb recognized the name from charity galas and newspaper headlines. Denton was a prominent figure in Veterans Affairs, always front and center at fundraisers. His company, Denton Construction, handled millions in government contracts for veterans' housing projects. But according to Elena's files, those projects were hollow. Buildings left unfinished, safety regulations ignored, money vanishing into offshore accounts. She'd uncovered it all, and now she was paying the price. With trembling hands, Caleb forwarded the files to himself and cleared the computer's history. He needed help. Someone with resources and skills he didn't have. Someone who knew how to track people who didn't want to be found. In his truck, Caleb pulled out his phone and scrolled to a number he hadn't called in years. Ray Morales had served with him in Afghanistan, later becoming a private investigator specializing in missing persons cases. If anyone could help find Elena, it was Ray. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. "Turner? Man, it's been forever." "Ray, I need your help." Caleb's voice cracked slightly. "Someone's been taken. Someone important to me." There was a pause, then Ray's tone turned serious. "Tell me everything," Caleb explained about Elena, the crash, the threats, and now the evidence of corruption. "She was investigating Harold Denton. Next thing I know, she's gone. Blood in her car. Denton?" Ray whistled low. "That's heavy, brother. Guy's got connections everywhere. Police, politics, you name it. Will you help me find her?" "You know I will." Ray's voice softened. "You saved my life in Kandahar. I still owe too." "I can't lose her, Ray." Caleb gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. "Not like this." "Meet me at dawn," Ray said. "That diner off Route 40 where we used to get breakfast. We'll figure this out." "Thank you, brother." After hanging up, Caleb sat in his truck, staring at the hospital's illuminated windows. Somewhere in one of those rooms, he'd found hope again, found Elena. Now she was gone, and he felt that familiar darkness creeping back in. He closed his eyes, remembering the prayers he'd whispered in foxholes and under mortar fire. The same words came back now, as natural as breathing. Lord, guide me through the fire again. The morning sun cast long shadows across the empty parking lot of Ray's Security Solutions as Caleb pulled up in his truck, the engine's rumble echoing off the concrete walls of the industrial complex. His old friend Ray Morales stood waiting by the glass entrance. But what made Caleb's heart skip wasn't Ray's familiar figure. It was the two men flanking him, faces weathered by time and memory but unmistakably familiar. Marcus Doc Thompson and Brian Hawk Peterson, both from his old unit, both men he'd thought he might never see again outside of dreams that turned to nightmares. Ray stepped forward as Caleb climbed out of the truck, his usual easy smile replaced by the kind of grim determination Caleb remembered from their deployment days, the kind that meant lives were on the line. Called in some backup, Ray said, his voice carrying the weight of unspoken understanding. Figured we might need it. Doc, their former combat medic, gave a solemn nod that spoke volumes. His medical bag hung at his side like a faithful companion. Old habits die hard, and some instincts never fade. The bag looked different from the one he'd carried in Afghanistan, civilian black instead of military olive. But Caleb could see the same careful organization in how Doc carried himself, the same readiness to patch up whatever damage the world might inflict. Hawk, their ex-sniper, stood quietly scanning the surrounding buildings and parking lot, his eyes moving in practiced patterns that cataloged every potential threat, every escape route, every angle of approach. Already in mission mode, his posture straight but relaxed, ready to spring into action at the first sign of trouble. Like old times, Caleb said, his voice thick with emotion he couldn't quite swallow down. The words came out rougher than he'd intended, carrying 5 years of separation and grief. -1. They all knew he meant Aaron. The absence hung heavy in the morning air like fog that wouldn't burn off. A fifth presence that should have been there, completing their circle. Doc's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Hawk's scanning paused for just a moment. Ray's hand found Caleb's shoulder and squeezed once, hard. Inside Ray's office, the familiar smell of coffee and electronics greeted them, but the atmosphere was pure war room. Photos and documents covered a large corkboard that dominated one wall, connected by red string like a spider's web of corruption and deceit. Ray pointed to a grainy security camera image of a black SUV, the license plate just barely visible in the pixelated frame. This vehicle's been spotted near 3 different warehouses, owned by shell companies linked to Denton Enterprises, he explained, tapping the photo with a pen. Same car, same tinted windows, different locations. They're not even trying to hide anymore. Elena's files showed a pattern, Doc added, spreading out printed spreadsheets across Ray's desk with the same methodical precision he'd once used to organize medical supplies. The papers rustled softly as he arranged them in chronological order. Veterans' housing funds going in, ghost contractors pulling them out. But she found something bigger. Medical supply kickbacks, fraudulent construction permits, even pharmacy fraud. Denton's been bleeding the system dry for... Hawk moved to the large map pinned to the opposite wall, his finger tracing routes between marked locations. We start here, he said, tapping a warehouse location marked with a red pin. Industrial district. Lots of cover, minimal civilian traffic. If they're holding her, they'll want somewhere isolated but with multiple exit strategies. Caleb studied the documents spread before him, his mechanic's hands trembling slightly as he touched Elena's handwritten notes scattered among the official papers. Her neat script, written in blue ink with the careful attention to detail he'd come to know so well, reminded him of quiet evenings watching her work at his kitchen table. Lily, bringing her tea in the mismatched mugs they'd inherited from his late wife. The 3 of them forming something that had felt like home. Something he'd thought he'd lost forever. She confronted them, Ray explained, his voice pulling Caleb back from the memory of Elena's laugh, echoing through his kitchen. 2 days before the car show, Elena met with Denton's board, walked right into their corporate office downtown, and threatened to expose everything to the VA Inspector General. Security footage shows her leaving with a briefcase full of documents. That's when the threats started, Caleb said, remembering the note on his windshield. The feeling of being watched, the way Elena had started checking her rearview mirror obsessively. All the signs he should have recognized, should have protected her from. Doc pulled up a laptop from his bag, typing rapidly with the speed of someone who'd learned to work fast under pressure. I accessed her phone records through the hospital Wi-Fi she used last week, he said, windows flashing across the screen as he navigated through databases with practiced ease. Last GPS ping came from here. He pointed to an image of an abandoned textile mill on the outskirts of town, the brick structure looming against a gray sky like something from a horror movie. Signal died there yesterday afternoon. 3:47 p.m. Exactly. The old brick building on the screen sent a chill down Caleb's spine that had nothing to do with the morning air conditioning. He'd seen too many ambush spots like that in Afghanistan, places where shadows held secrets, and every doorway promised danger, where the enemy could be waiting behind any corner, with patience that outlasted hope. The memory hit him hard and fast, like it always did when his guard was down. Dust and gunfire, the acrid smell of explosives, Aaron's voice shouting, "Cover!" before the explosion that took him, the sound of his friend's final breath, the weight of Aaron's body in his arms, the blood that wouldn't stop flowing no matter how hard Caleb pressed his hands against the wound. Caleb's hands gripped the edge of Ray's desk, his knuckles white with the force of memory he couldn't quite push away. Ray noticed immediately, placing a steady hand on his shoulder with the kind of understanding that only came from shared trauma. "We've got your six, brother," he said quietly, using the military phrase that meant, "You're not alone. We're watching your back. We're in this together." Just like always. Hawk laid out 4 tactical vests on the desk, with the reverence of a priest preparing communion. "Called in some favors from my security firm," he explained, checking each piece of equipment methodically. "Comms, basic protection, non-lethal options, nothing that'll get us arrested. Everything we need to bring her home safe." "This isn't Afghanistan," Doc reminded them, checking his medical supplies with the same attention to detail he'd once given to battlefield conditions. His voice carried both warning and reassurance. "We do this smart, we do this legal. No unnecessary risks. No cowboy heroics." Caleb nodded, forcing the memories back into the locked box in his mind where he kept the worst of the war. This wasn't about the past anymore. Wasn't about the blood and sand and endless guilt that had haunted him for 5 years. This was about Elena, her gentle strength when she'd organized the charity event, her faith in second chances when she'd looked at him like he was worth saving, the way she'd brought light back into his and Lily's world when he'd thought darkness was all they had left. They gathered their gear methodically, muscle memory from years of service taking over like riding a bicycle. Radios checked and double-checked, frequencies coordinated, routes planned, and backup routes planned for the backup routes. Roles assigned based on skills and experience. Ray would handle surveillance and coordination, Hawk on overwatch with his sniper's eye for detail, Doc ready for any medical needs that might arise. Standing in the morning light outside Ray's office, the cool air carrying the scent of coffee from a nearby diner and the distant rumble of highway traffic, the 4 men shared a look that spoke of bonds forged in combat and renewed by purpose. Brothers who had bled together, grieved together, and now would fight together one more time. Caleb touched the letter from Aaron in his pocket. His friend's last words about finding light in the darkness, about forgiveness and second chances and the courage to love again. "We finish this," Caleb said quietly, his voice steel and prayer combined, carrying the weight of everything he'd lost and everything he still had to protect. For her, for Aaron, for everyone Denton's hurt. His brothers in arms nodded, and for a moment, standing there in the morning sun with gear strapped to their chests and determination in their hearts, he felt Aaron's presence among them, that same unwavering faith that had guided them through their darkest hours, the certainty that some fights were worth fighting, no matter the cost. The old textile mill loomed against the darkening sky, its broken windows like hollow eyes staring down at them. Caleb crouched behind a rusted shipping container, his heart beating steadily despite the danger ahead. Ray Morales, Marcus Doc Peterson, and Tommy Chen, his old unit brothers, spread out in formation, just like they had done countless times in Afghanistan. 2 guards at the east entrance, Ray whispered through their earpieces. Another patrolling the fence line. Caleb checked his watch, 8:47 p.m. The last traces of sunset were fading, giving them the cover of darkness they needed. He touched the familiar weight of his father's silver cross beneath his shirt, a gesture that had become habit in moments like these. "Tommy, take care of the cameras," Caleb instructed. "Doc, you're our eyes up high. Ray, you're with me." Tommy disappeared into the shadows, his expertise in electronics making quick work of the security system. Doc shouldered his way up a rusty fire escape, setting up his position with the same precision he'd used as their unit's marksman. Guards changing shift, Doc's voice crackled in their ears. 20 seconds. Caleb and Ray moved like ghosts across the gravel, their footsteps silent from years of training. The lock on the side door gave way under Ray's skilled hands, and they slipped inside the mill's musty darkness. The interior was a maze of old machinery and stacked crates. Somewhere above, they heard voices and the distinct sound of paper being destroyed. The acrid smell of burning documents filled the air. Multiple targets, second floor. Doc reported from his perch. 4, no, 5 armed individuals. They're destroying evidence. Just like you thought. Caleb's jaw tightened. All those veterans' records, proof of Denton's corruption, going up in flames. But that wasn't why they were here. Elena was all that mattered now. They found the stairs, testing each step to avoid creaks. Ray covered their 6, his movements as fluid as they'd been overseas. Some skills never forgot their way home. A muffled cry echoed from somewhere below. "Basement level." Tommy's voice came through. "I've got eyes on her through the security feed. Storage room C7, 2 guards." Caleb's heart clenched. Elena was here. She was alive. They changed direction, descending into the mill's belly. The air grew thicker, heavy with decades of dust and decay. Light filtered weakly through grime-covered windows, casting strange shadows across their path. The first guard never saw Ray coming. The second reached for his weapon but found Caleb's iron grip instead. Both men went down silently, efficiently subdued, and zip-tied. Through the small window of storage room C7, Caleb finally saw her. Elena sat bound to a chair, her face bruised but her eyes still blazing with defiance. The sight of her sparked something fierce in his chest, a mix of relief and rage that threatened to overwhelm his training. 2 minutes until the next patrol, Tommy warned. Ray picked the lock while Caleb stood guard. The door swung open with a soft creak. Elena's eyes widened when she saw him. She tried to speak through her gag, shaking her head frantically. Warning them, the explosion above rocked the building. "Company!" Doc shouted through the comm. "They're torching the whole place!" Smoke began seeping through the ceiling as Caleb rushed to Elena's side. His knife made quick work of her restraints. She collapsed against him, legs weak from hours of confinement. "They're destroying everything," she rasped, voice hoarse. "All the evidence." "Later," Caleb said firmly, lifting her into his arms. "We're getting you out first." The scene descended into chaos. Fire alarms blared. Footsteps thundered above them. Ray led the way back toward their exit point, but flames had already begun consuming the wooden support beams. "Main exit's blocked," Tommy reported urgently. "East side's still clear." They changed course, moving through the smoky darkness. Elena's arms tightened around Caleb's neck as burning debris rained down around them. The heat was becoming unbearable, reminding him too much of that night on Highway 27. Except this time, the stakes were even higher. A shadow emerged through the smoke. One of Denton's men, gun raised. Ray tackled him before he could fire, the 2 men disappearing into the haze. "Go!" Ray shouted. "I'll catch up." Caleb pressed forward, Elena secured against his chest. His lungs burned, sweat stung his eyes, but his grip never wavered. The building groaned ominously above them. "Move it!" Doc's voice crackled with urgency. "Roof's coming down." They burst through the east door just as the first section collapsed. The cool night air hit them like a blessing, and Caleb didn't stop running until they reached the safety of the tree line. He finally set Elena down, supporting her as she found her footing. Ray emerged from the inferno moments later, coughing but intact. Tommy and Doc regrouped from their positions, all of them watching as the old mill became a blazing beacon against the night sky. Elena trembled in Caleb's arms, tears cutting clean trails through the soot on her face. "You came," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. Caleb pulled her closer, his heart still racing from more than just exertion. "Always," he whispered back, the word carrying all the weight of a promise. They stood together, watching flames consume the past while sirens wailed in the distance. The battle wasn't over. Denton was still out there, and they'd lost valuable evidence. But in that moment, with Elena safe beside him, Caleb knew they'd already won what mattered most. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the hospital window, casting warm rectangles across Elena's bed. The TV mounted on the wall played a news report showing Harold Denton being led away in handcuffs, his polished business image now tarnished by scandal. The headline scrolled beneath, "Veterans Housing Fraud Exposed. Whistleblower Elena Parker Cleared." Elena sat propped up against white pillows, her bruises fading to yellow-green but her spirit bright as ever. The room around her had transformed from sterile white to vibrant color. Cards from veterans' families covered one wall, while fresh flowers dotted every surface. A handmade poster from Lily declaring, "Our hero," hung prominently by the window. Detective Mason had visited that morning to share the good news. Denton's arrest was just the beginning. The evidence Elena had gathered was leading to more arrests, more corrupt officials being exposed. The system she'd fought so hard to fix was finally facing real change. Caleb knocked softly on the doorframe, even though her door was open. "Hey there, Crusader," he said with a gentle smile. "My guardian angel," Elena replied, her face lighting up. She patted the edge of her bed. "Come sit with me. I was just watching justice finally happen." Caleb settled beside her, careful not to disturb any of the monitoring wires. His hand found hers naturally now, their fingers intertwining. "The whole town's talking about you, the brave woman who stood up to corruption and won." Elena shook her head. "I wasn't brave at first. I was terrified. But then this stubborn mechanic showed me what real courage looks like." She squeezed his hand. "You didn't just save my life twice, Caleb. You gave me the strength to keep fighting when I wanted to run away." "That's not how I remember it," Caleb said softly. "I was just going through the motions before you came along. Existing, not living." He touched the frame of Erin's photo that now sat on her bedside table. "You helped me understand what Erin's letter really meant. About finding light again." A commotion in the hallway interrupted them. Lily burst in, her arms full of bright yellow daisies. "Elena! Dad! Look what Mrs. Henderson from the flower shop sent." She started arranging them in an empty vase, chattering about her day at school and how everyone kept asking about her dad's girlfriend who caught the bad guys. Elena laughed, the sound pure joy despite her injuries. "Lily Turner, you are exactly what this boring hospital room needed." "Well, somebody has to keep you two from getting too mushy," Lily teased. But her eyes were soft with happiness as she watched them together. For the next hour, they shared easy conversation and leftover cookies from the nurse's station. Lily sprawled in the visitor's chair, telling Elena about her history project. Caleb noticed how naturally they had fallen into this rhythm, his daughter and the woman who had crashed into their lives like a shooting star, now fitting together as if they'd always been meant to be a family. The afternoon light began to fade, and Elena's eyes grew heavy despite her attempts to stay awake. Lily kissed her cheek goodbye, whispering something that made Elena smile broadly before heading out to wait in the hall. "You should rest," Caleb said, starting to rise, but Elena held onto his hand. "Stay? Just until I fall asleep?" Her voice was already drowsy. "I sleep better knowing you're here. Always," he promised, settling back beside her. The room grew quiet, except for the soft beeping of monitors. Elena's breathing deepened, her hand still warm in his. Caleb watched her face smooth into peaceful sleep, marveling at how this one extraordinary soul had turned his world upside down and somehow made everything right again. The monitors hummed their steady rhythm as twilight settled over the hospital room. In the peace of that moment, Caleb felt the last shadows of his past finally begin to fade, replaced by the warmth of new beginnings and healing hearts. The late August sun painted golden streaks through the tall windows of Hope House Veterans Center. The newly constructed building stood proud against the Tennessee sky, its red brick facade and white columns a testament to perseverance and community spirit. A large banner draped across the entrance read, "Hope House, in memory of those who saved us." Hundreds of folding chairs lined the courtyard, filled with townspeople, veterans, families. American flags fluttered in the warm breeze, and red, white, and blue bunting decorated the podium. The scent of fresh-cut grass and late summer flowers drifted through the air. Caleb Turner stood at the edge of the stage, fidgeting with his tie. He wasn't used to wearing one, preferring the comfort of his mechanic's work shirt, but today was special. Lily, looking grown up in a summer dress, squeezed his hand and whispered, "You've got this, Dad." Elena Parker stood on his other side, her dark hair catching the sunlight. The bruises from her ordeal had long since faded, but sometimes Caleb still caught her rubbing her wrist where the ropes had cut into her skin. Today, though, her eyes shone with pride and purpose. She'd traded her usual casual work clothes for a blue sundress that made her look radiant. Mayor Thompson approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the dedication of Hope House Veterans Center." He gestured to the building behind him. "This facility will serve as a beacon of hope for our veterans, providing housing assistance, counseling, and community support. None of this would have been possible without the courage of two extraordinary people." The crowd applauded as Caleb and Elena stepped forward. The mayor handed Caleb a large pair of ceremonial scissors, their blades gleaming in the sunlight. The red ribbon stretched across the entrance, rippled in the breeze. Caleb's hands trembled slightly as he positioned the scissors. Elena's fingers brushed against his arm, a subtle gesture of support that steadied him. Lily beamed from her spot next to them, phone raised to capture the moment. The scissors sliced through the ribbon with a satisfying snip. Applause erupted from the crowd, punctuated by a few whoops and cheers from Caleb's former Army buddies in the front row. Mayor Thompson gestured for Caleb to take the podium. He pulled a wrinkled piece of paper from his pocket, then tucked it away unused. The words he needed weren't written down, they lived in his heart. A few months ago, Caleb began, his voice growing stronger with each word. "I was driving home on Highway 27, just trying to make it through another day. Then I saw flames, and everything changed." He paused, looking out at the sea of familiar faces. "I thought I was just pulling someone from a burning car. Turns out, God had bigger plans." Elena wiped a tear from her cheek as Caleb continued. "My best friend, Sergeant Aaron Miles, once told me that faith isn't about avoiding the fire. It's about walking through it and trusting you're not alone." His voice caught slightly. "Sometimes God doesn't save us from the fire. He saves us through it." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Several veterans nodded, understanding written across their faces. "This center represents more than just buildings and programs," Caleb said. "It represents hope rising from ashes. It represents second chances." He glanced at Elena, then Lily. "And third chances. It represents the truth that no soldier should ever have to fight their battles alone." Ray Morales, who'd helped rescue Elena, called out from his seat, "Hooah!" Other veterans echoed the cry, bringing a smile to Caleb's face. "Aaron's letter told me to find the light God was still shining on me," Caleb said, his voice softening. "I didn't understand then, but standing here today, looking at this building, at all of you." He gestured to the crowd, to Elena and Lily, to the veterans seated in front. "I see that light everywhere." Applause thundered across the courtyard. Elena stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Caleb's shoulder. Lily rushed to hug them both, creating a moment that several photographers eagerly captured. As the crowd began to move inside for the reception, Caleb and Elena lingered on the steps. The late afternoon sun bathed everything in honey-colored light, making the moment feel somehow sacred. They didn't need grand declarations or dramatic gestures. Their love had been forged in fire, tested by danger, and strengthened by faith. It showed in the way Elena's hand found Caleb's, in the peaceful smile that now came easily to his face, in the quiet understanding that passed between them. Lily bounded back out, her dress swishing. "Come on, slowpokes! They're cutting the cake inside!" Caleb laughed, a free, unburdened sound that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Elena squeezed his hand, and together they followed Lily into Hope House, where healing hearts and new beginnings waited. The summer breeze carried the sound of laughter and conversation through the open doors, while the American flag waved gently above, its shadows dancing across the words carved in stone beneath it. Hope never dies. Inside, veterans gathered around tables, sharing stories and coffee. Volunteers organized paperwork for the center's first clients. Ray and the other members of Caleb's old unit clustered near the refreshment table, already planning activities for the younger vets. Through it all, Caleb and Elena moved together, their steps in perfect sync, their shared glances speaking volumes. No grand gestures needed, just quiet, steady love built from survival and faith, growing stronger with each passing day. Fireflies danced in the cooling evening air of the Turner backyard, their gentle lights twinkling like earthbound stars. 3 folded paper lanterns sat on the weathered picnic table, where Caleb, Elena, and Lily huddled together with markers in hand. The sweet scent of Elena's garden roses mingled with the earthy perfume of fresh-cut grass. "What should I write?" Lily asked, tapping her marker against her chin. Her long brown hair caught the golden light of the setting sun. Elena smiled, her healing scars barely visible in the soft twilight. "Whatever's in your heart, sweetheart. A wish, a prayer, a hope." Caleb watched them both, his chest tight with emotion. These quiet moments still caught him off guard, how natural it felt. The 3 of them together, like pieces of a puzzle finally finding their place. Lily bent over her lantern, writing carefully in her neat teenage script. Elena caught Caleb's eye and gave him that smile that still made his heart skip, the one that said she knew exactly what he was thinking. He looked down at his own lantern, the paper smooth beneath his calloused fingers. The marker hovered for a moment, before he began to write. The words came easier now than they once had. "Thank you for leading me back to light." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the old maple tree that had watched over this yard through all the lonely years. Now its branches spread wide like welcoming arms over their small family. "Ready?" Elena asked, holding up her completed lantern. The others nodded, and they moved to the center of the yard where the air was clearest. Caleb helped them light the small fuel cells at the base of each lantern. The paper began to glow from within, warm and inviting against the deepening purple of the evening sky. "Together?" Lily asked, holding her lantern with both hands. She looked so grown up now, stronger and happier than she'd been in years. "Together," Elena confirmed, stepping close to them both. They released the lanterns as one. The paper vessels caught the wind and began their slow, graceful ascent. Caleb felt Elena's hand slip into his, while Lily leaned against his other side. "Look how beautiful they are," Lily whispered, her face tilted up to watch their wishes climb toward the first evening stars. Caleb's free hand found Aaron's letter in his pocket, worn soft now from countless readings. He didn't need to unfold it anymore. The words were etched in his heart. "Brother, the light of God's grace never leaves us, even when we can't see it through the smoke. Sometimes it takes another soul to help us find our way back to it. When that moment comes, don't turn away from the blessing. You deserve to live in the light again." The lanterns drifted higher, their glow steady and sure against the darkening sky. Caleb thought about that night on Highway 27, when flames had brought Elena into his life. How fitting that now, months later, they watched different kinds of lights rise together, not destructive, but healing, not threatening, but promising. His daughter's laughter had returned to the house. Elena's gentle strength had helped rebuild not just his faith, but his ability to trust and love again. Even the nightmares that had haunted him since Afghanistan had begun to fade, replaced by dreams of future moments just like this one. The breeze carried the sweet scent of Elena's roses around them as their lanterns joined the emerging stars. Caleb felt tears prick his eyes, but for once, they weren't born of grief or guilt. Looking up at those 3 points of light ascending into the infinite sky, Caleb whispered words meant for the brother who had saved his life in more ways than one. You were right, brother. The light never went out. The lanterns climbed higher and higher, 3 golden beacons against the endless canvas of twilight, carrying their hopes toward heaven like prayers made of light and paper and love. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Caleb Turner, I hand-picked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.